still going live, and this is live. All right, welcome everyone to the Texas Bitcoin Frontier, which is a consortium of various Texas-based Bitcoin meetups. This includes Austin, Dallas, and possibly Houston, if you don't like that. If Bitcoin is to now what the internet is to 1994, our speaker today is to Bitcoin what Mark Andreessen was to the internet back in 1994. He's an entrepreneur that's founded Satoshi Dice, Coinapult, Atheist, and Easyverse. He was also the VP of Marketing at BitInstant and was part of the Free State Project in New Hampshire. He's got a wealth of experience as an entrepreneur in Bitcoin, in the Bitcoin space, and he's also been interviewed on various libertarian radio shows like Peter Schiff as an expert on Bitcoin. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Erik Voorhees.
Hello.
Let's start with some current news. The Bit license comment period was recently extended by 45 days. What are your thoughts on the Bit license, and what do you think should be the course of action for the Bitcoin community?
Yeah, that's my favorite topic of all is the Bit license. Well, I wrote actually a big, long piece about what I thought on the Bit license, I guess about a month ago, which is at moneyandstate.com, which is my blog. And basically, I discussed a number of things that I found to be problematic with it. Obviously, I don't think New York has any... They don't deserve to be regulating anyone. The current financial system that they regulate is a huge mess, and so I think it takes a lot of hubris and ignorance to have those same people start imposing whatever rules they want on this brand new, wonderful, virgin, financial system of Bitcoin. So they should just, stay the F out. But if you want a little more intelligent response, my main issue with it is that it tries to completely violate individual user privacy. And this was my main problem with it. So right now, when we pay for things online, we have credit cards and we have PayPal, and these are all tied to our identities. And so whenever we shop with a merchant around the world, we are giving our identity essentially to that merchant, and we have to trust them. So I've probably purchased from hundreds of people online, and that means my personal information is scattered all over the internet. And I think that's terrible. That's not how it should work. If I go into a little store in my neighborhood and I buy something in cash, they don't need to know who I am. They don't need my address. They don't need to take down all this personal information. So why is it okay that we have privacy when it comes to these cash transactions, which can be big, right? You can buy a $5,000 thing with cash somewhere. But when it comes to online, we're not given that same respect and the same privacy. And now we have Bitcoin that comes along and fixes that problem and finally gives us privacy back on the internet for our commerce. And Ben Losky and his minions ride in on their horse and try to take that away and say, well, because we are protecting the world from terrorism, we need to know everything about everyone. And it's very Orwellian, and they seem to be okay with that because they believe that they are the good guys and that they're looking out for people and protecting them and keeping the bad guys out. And so they require people to hand over all their information. And the Bit license essentially requires all the Bitcoin companies to keep track of everyone's purchases, what their name is, where they live, all these kind of things that a normal credit card transaction would do. So it just completely destroys what Bitcoin is about. And that privacy issue was my main concern with it.
So what do you think should be the community response given all this? I think I totally agree with you. I think before you called out some of the Jeremy Allairs and others that were calling to sort of cooperate. Do you agree with them, disagree with them? What do you think our response should be?
Well, let me just comment on Jeremy Allaire real quick, because about a week or two ago he put up a blog post that was, while diplomatic, fairly critical of the Bit license, and I was really happy that he did that. And he basically said in that if the Bit license passed as as in its current form, Circle, which is this company, would just have to block New Yorkers. And I think a lot of Bitcoin companies are. I mean, my company Coinapult blocks not just New York but the entire United States, and we've done this for a number of months because we think that the regulatory in the environment in the United States is just too hostile. But it's really good to see other business leaders standing up and just publicly proclaiming that they will block New York too. So I think that's a good thing. People need to vote with their feet, and if these draconian laws come out and all these Bitcoin companies just stop serving New Yorkers, it'll hurt the companies a little bit, because that's a big market. But at the same time, people in New York are going. Here's the irony: the people in New York are going to be cut off from this new financial system, and New York is the center of global finance. I mean, it is the leading financial city of the world. And now this new financial system is arising all over the place. It does amazing things. And because of these politicians, it's very possible that the people in New York are going to be ring-fenced out of it and just excluded from it. And I think it's a terrible irony there. And I guess we can thank the politicians for it.
Right.
You asked earlier, sorry, real quick, you said what should the community do? And I think that the community should do lots of things. It should act in a decentralized way and basically try all sorts of things. Some people should just ignore the rules altogether, and I'm sure they will. Especially people in other countries that they don't need to care what some stupid bureaucrat in New York City says. They should do what they want, and they should build their businesses and help people. So some people should ignore it. Some people should fight it on the political front. Some people are really good at that. It is a political issue, so people are engaging in the political process and dealing with it that way. Other people are just being loud about it and speaking out and trying to get other people interested and trying to get this issue to be on the top of people's minds. Some people are trying to change it, some people are trying to block it, some people are just trying to say that it's really stupid and should be gone. So it's kind of a multi-pronged approach that all sorts of different people are doing different things, and I think that's exactly how it should be, because I don't really know what the most effective way to fight tyranny is, but if a lot of people are trying different things, then whatever sticks will work.
So what do you think about some of the? I think you touched on this already a little bit about like privacy, and I know we've heard from the community some people that don't want that are willing to give up a little bit more privacy, in terms of Bitcoin in order to get more regulatory cooperation. What are your thoughts on sort of that balance? Where do you see, if any, sort of objections on that?
Bitcoin has become a big community, and lots of different people and lots of diverse interests. And certainly some of those interests are just in it purely to make some money, to build a business, and of course that's great. But some of those people think that the way that Bitcoin will be adopted by the mainstream is when the government sort of gives its blessing and anoints Bitcoin and regulates it. For some reason in the U.S., people seem to think that something is not legitimate until the government has written 4,000 pages of documents explaining how they will control your use of it. So there are people who want the government to write all that regulation because then they think that Bitcoin is legitimate and then it will grow faster. I obviously think that that's ridiculous. The issue with privacy is that by default, people should get privacy if they haven't done anything wrong and if they haven't been even accused of a crime. It should just be a accepted truth that you can remain private if you haven't hurt anyone. And if there's a regulation that requires every person's transaction to be known and the individual's identity to be known, that gets removed. And once you lose privacy over your identity, you can't get it back. It's gone. So if someone wants to voluntarily give up their identity, fine, they should be able to do that. But to say that everyone should be mandated to do that is, I think, pretty abhorrent. And in the same way that people are permitted to keep locks on their doors and shades on their windows, giving them privacy in their home. That for whatever reason we allow that is the same reason why we should allow someone to be private with their finances. I don't see that there's any difference.
All right, so last question before we open the floor up to questions from the audience. You obviously started a lot of Bitcoin businesses. I think I listed 4, but I'm sure there are more. What advice do you have for the would-be Bitcoin entrepreneurs? Maybe some advice that might be specific to Bitcoin.
Well, the first thing about entrepreneurship is that most businesses fail, and that's true in the normal world, and it's true in the Bitcoin world. So 9 out of 10 Bitcoin businesses that are going to get started are just going to be complete failures, and whether they were a good idea or not, don't let that get you down. I've seen a lot of people that start a business and it just isn't really going anywhere, so they just kind of quit. And ultimately, you have to just keep trying things. Entrepreneurship is about finding needs and building systems that cater to those needs. And no one really knows what will be successful until it's tested out in the marketplace. I think when it comes to Bitcoin businesses specifically, the thing that people worry about the most, unfortunately, is the legal issues. And it would be really nice if entrepreneurs could just be left alone to build their businesses and grow the wealth of the world, but politicians don't want to permit that to happen. So they are a tremendous distraction and cost, and it really sucks. In the U.S., it's the worst. I mean, regardless of whether a company is going to comply with the FinCEN guidance or New York BIT licenses, they're going to end up paying $50 or $100 or $500,000 to lawyers just to tell them how to navigate that stuff. So that means the 18-year-old who's just gone off to college and has a great idea and builds a business, unless he wants to risk going to jail, he's going to have to raise tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars just to not even to fight the law, just to have professional lawyers tell him how to navigate it. And that's really a shame. So I'm a firm believer that if people want to build a business, they should just do it. And if that means you need to use a different identity to build a project that you're worried about, do it. I think people need to experiment, and we have all these privacy tools, Bitcoin being just one of many. So if you have a business and you don't want to go spend $200,000 on lawyers, you think it's a valuable service, be private about it. Run it pseudonymously. That's one way to do it. And I know that there are a lot of Bitcoin businesses out there that are run by people who don't allow others to figure out who they are because they're afraid of the government.
Actually, this is a good segue then to maybe you can talk a little bit about Coinapult. I heard Ira the other day on Peter Schiff's show talking about Coinapult's new locks. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that. And secondly, maybe you could talk a little bit about Peter Schiff himself, actually. He seems to have warmed a little bit to the topic, and I think you had a lot to do with that. So yeah, start with Coinapult, your business right now.
Yeah. So I was CEO of Coinapult until January of this year. I stepped down as CEO, but I'm still a co-owner and a co-founder of Coinapult. But Coinapult it does a few things. It's a wallet, so you can go to coinapult.com and get a wallet. It's actually blocked to Americans, though, so all you guys in Texas can't use it. But the rest of the world can use it as a wallet, and it's a way to send Bitcoin through SMS. So people with phones can send Bitcoins to each other, even if they don't have a smartphone or anything like that. Also, Coinapult does B2B Bitcoin sales, so other companies that need to buy or sell Bitcoins on a regular basis can work with Coinapult for that. And then the new thing that Coinapult's doing is called locks, and I think locks is a really important new piece of Bitcoin infrastructure. Basically, most people don't like speculating on currencies. I mean, we all do because we're Bitcoiners and we love going to the moon. But the average person wants a stable currency. So how can they use all of the benefits of the crypto world, fast transactions and no fees and all that, without suffering the volatility? And so Coinapult built locks for this. And basically, locks just is pretty simple. It just lets you lock a certain amount of Bitcoin to a more stable asset. So you can lock to dollars or euros or even gold. And what it means is, let's say you put $1,000 worth of Bitcoin in your Coinable Bitcoin wallet. If you lock it to dollars, it will always be worth $1,000. So tomorrow you'll still have $1,000 of Bitcoin. In 2 years you'll still have $1,000 of Bitcoin. So it keeps it stable, and then you can unlock it whenever you want. So it lets you stay in the crypto world without suffering the volatility. So it's pretty cool. People should try it. Obviously, most of you guys can't because you're in the US, but other people have started finding unique ways to use that service. It's available as an API. That's how we figure most people want to use it. And then your other question was about Peter Schiff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we had discussed this a little bit earlier, but Peter Schiff was actually one of my kind of idols long ago when I used to live in Dubai, and leading up into the financial crisis and right afterward. He was one of the first people I started listening to, and he went a long way to teach me about how gold worked and why gold was good money and what money was, and why central banking and fiat currencies were so problematic. And he's a really smart guy, and he has lots of great arguments. And so fast forward several years to Bitcoin, and it was really disappointing how averse he was to it. He claims to be a very free market guy, but this amazing free market solution comes out that solves all these problems of money transferring, and he ignored it at first, and then eventually called it a Ponzi scheme. So a lot of people called him out on that, and it ended up in a debate with me and him, and I think between that debate and probably most of his fans calling him an idiot and telling him that he needed to pay attention to Bitcoin, he's slowly turned around on his position, and Euro Pacific Precious Metals, which is his company, now accepts Bitcoin. So I think it's safe to say that the battle with Peter Schiff has been won. He's still a little bitter, but it's fine.
Great. Let's get Dallas in here.
Yeah. So Dallas, it's your turn for a. Oh, they muted themselves.
Okay.
There we go.
All right. So Dallas, please go and ask your question.
Hello. Yeah, that's interesting what you say about Peter Schiff. I watched one of the original debates you had with him back when it was all first beginning of the big initial Bitcoin boom. But yeah, I actually had seen an interview with him with Jeffrey Tucker where he was telling Jeffrey that he was very pleased with a lot of things about Bitcoin in his business, just because it was bringing down the cost of transaction costs for him in his metal business. So I think that Peter Schiff has changed his tune a lot, just to add that. But also, yeah, let me just go back to my old question. What are the challenges moving forward as far as getting Bitcoin to other parts of the world that maybe don't have internet access? I mean, I know things about M-Pesa and things like that that can connect, but I just know that there's a big learning curve and a big gap between the ability of this technology to get to other parts of the world before more developed nations really buy up all the Bitcoins, and ultimately we still have a have-not situation. But anyway, just to simplify, what are the challenges going forward in other nations that don't have as much technology?
Well, unfortunately, spending time reading about technology and arguing with statists on Reddit is a luxury that someone who is in an impoverished country can't necessarily afford. So there's just a natural block from people in some of these other countries to be exposed to Bitcoin. They don't read the places where they would see it. It's just not something that comes on their radar. And so communicating Bitcoin's advantages to people in that kind of situation is difficult. And ultimately, it's probably just going to have to come from each place. Each country has its own payment systems, its own customs, its own kind of economy of how people buy and sell goods, and people within those economies are going to have to recognize how Bitcoin can work in their territory. I don't think someone from the U.S. can go over to Zambia and say, here's Bitcoin, here's how you guys should use it. Someone in Zambia has to come across it and say, wow, this can totally change business for myself and my friends, and start using it. So it has to be done in a very decentralized, grassroots way, and it just takes time. 2 years ago, I remember talking with people about Argentina and saying, well, why the hell isn't anyone in Argentina using Bitcoin? The currency is falling apart. They should know better. But there was, no one in Argentina using it, and now it's been 2 years, and it's getting pretty big there. There's meetups that are growing very fast. There was the conference there several months ago. Taxi drivers were starting to take Bitcoin, and if you look at the maps that show the retail locations in Argentina, there's a couple hundred now. So ultimately, it's just a question of time, and individual people who are seeking out profit and usefulness will come across Bitcoin and expose the people around them.
All right.
Okay, we're gonna pull in Austin here.
Hi. So, judging by current events and seeing things that are happening in New York, it seems highly likely that lawmakers will, continue to try to find creative solutions to regulate Bitcoin. So my question is, kind of like, how do you find the right balance between fighting against that and then, instead choosing to direct your energy into Bitcoin ventures, like, focus just on your Bitcoin entrepreneurship instead of fighting against the things that we can't really change into?
Yeah, I'm very happy that there are political type people that are fighting the political battle with these politicians. The Chamber of Digital Commerce and Data and the Bitcoin Foundation and a number of lawyers who are involved in the Bitcoin world. They're really doing a good job in stepping up and fighting the legal fight in that way. Whether they will have much of an influence or be successful, I don't know. But fortunately, I think the entrepreneur should just build. I mean, build and ask for forgiveness later. I think if everyone that's involved in Bitcoin just keeps building, there's no possible way that the regulations can ever keep up or stop it. The only thing that people need to worry about is if people get so frightened that actual productive work stops, and people just say, I can't keep building in Bitcoin because it's too scary. And that's the fear. But I don't think that's a big problem because Bitcoin is global. And while regulations might scare people in the U.S., there's people all over the world that are building it in different ways. So thank goodness we have multiple jurisdictions, and it's not just one monolithic world government that we have to deal with. At least we still have some sort of competition between governments, and that will help us.
All right, let's go to Dallas here. Dallas, you have a question?
Want to go? Yeah, he'll be here in a second.
I'm a reporter at a local radio station here in Dallas, so I don't really know that much about it. I'm really just learning about it, just to, sort of report on it. And I also am interested in maybe, getting into it. But so you mentioned a website that where you can lock the value to keep the Bitcoin stable. What was the name of that website?
Yeah, the name is coinapult.com, like catapult, but for coins.
Okay. How do you spell it?
coinapult.com. But unfortunately, because you live under a despotic government, you will be blocked from that website because you're in America.
Well, I know that, but I have family who lives in Costa Rica, and I've been kind of telling them about Bitcoin and stuff. And
yeah, they're free.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, they're free to use it.
Okay, cool. So how is like Bitcoin in like Panama and like Central America? Like, what is it like there?
Well, I think it's biggest down in Argentina, and that's really where it's catching on.
Okay.
Panama's a very small country. There's only like 1.3 million people, and very few people speak English. So the adoption of Bitcoin around the world has typically followed the adoption of internet penetration and just the English language. So countries where lots of people don't speak English are just not going to have lots of Bitcoiners yet. But it's starting. I mean, there were a couple months ago there was a magazine in Panama that had Bitcoin as the cover story, and it said like the La moneda del futuro, the money of the future, and so it was talking about it. It was all in Spanish, and I couldn't read it, but I'm pretty sure I know what it said.
You remember the name of the magazine?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, we have another one over here.
Hi, I'm curious if you have any further interest in the online gambling Bitcoin marketplace, or if you consider getting into any sort of crowdfunded gambling ideas.
I can't talk anything about crowdfunding whatsoever for reasons you can probably figure out. I'm happy to talk about gambling. With Satoshi Dice, I paid a lot of lawyers lots of money to tell me different things. Some of them would say that gambling in the U.S. is illegal and you can't do it. Others would say no, it's fine, but a couple states you can't do it. And others would say, well, because it's Bitcoin, it's fine. So basically, lawyers don't know what the hell they're talking about, and that's been difficult. But from what I understand, and I'm not a lawyer, in the U.S. it's not technically illegal to gamble online. There's no federal rules against it. There are federal rules against using the banking system to fund gambling sites, and it is that rule that took down all the poker sites a few years ago. They basically went in on this rule of using the banking system. And there are some states that have explicit laws against online gambling, and the federal government can act on behalf of those states. So even if there's no federal rule, the federal government could go after you ultimately if they wanted. So I don't know. What we did with Satoshi Dice eventually, after I had all these lawyers tell me different things, is we just blocked America, and that's kind of been my theme of business. It's just to, I just don't want to deal with the politicians. I don't want to deal with their subjectivity. I don't want to deal with their stupid laws. I don't want to deal with, all the costs and problems that they want to bring on me. So blocking the U.S. is kind of a good business strategy in a lot of ways, and it sucks to do it. I love America. It's where I grew up. I wish it was really the land of the free that all the school children are told, but it's not. And I think more and more people are going to start just blacklisting the U.S. because it's too dangerous. It's something you would expect from Russia or North Korea, but it's happening in the U.S. So sorry, does that answer your questions? Do you have a more specific one about online gaming?
Oh, I was hoping you could say more about any sort of ventures or the direction of that industry with Bitcoin. I feel like there's somewhat of a vacuum there in certain respects. I was just curious if you had any ideas, just about the space.
Yeah, so I expected that a lot of the online gambling companies would have adopted Bitcoin a lot earlier. From my travels and meetings with people, I came to understand that the main reason that they haven't is because they have these licenses in various jurisdictions, and the licenses just don't provide permission for Bitcoin. They don't ban it either. It's just kind of a gray area, and so a lot of the casino companies didn't want to take the risk, and they just kind of been hands off about it. And so because that's been true, lots of little Bitcoin casinos have started up to fill the need, and a lot of them have been really successful. Ultimately, the trend of all business around the world will be toward Bitcoin adoption, and so I would expect large casinos to start accepting Bitcoin. Whether it's this year or 5 years from now, it will happen. And so the small startups, if they haven't really gotten a niche and gotten a good bunch of loyal customers, they'll probably get gobbled up by the big casinos as soon as they move in with Bitcoin.
Hey, Eric. I'm Michael Goldstein. I run the Satoshi Nakamoto Institute. And we have a page called The Skeptics where we compile the visionary predictions of esteemed economists and journalists, etc. So we can put their reputations on the line as they fall off the death. And you've been in Bitcoin much longer than I have. I was just wondering if you had any particular favorite predictions from the past, whether it's Paul Krugman saying Bitcoin is evil or what, if you have any particular favorites.
Well, trying to predict the price of Bitcoin is obviously a fool's errand. The people that hate it, they tend to hate it for ideological reasons or because of the implications of if it occurs. So they like to, poo-poo it and make predictions, that it'll go to zero or something. But fewer, it's not very common that that the naysayers will actually make a prediction and stick to it. They tend to speak more in hyperbole and nebulous predictions like, well, Bitcoin will go to zero eventually, which is, until that happens, you can't prove it either way. So, who is that guy that got Professor Bitcoin? What was his name? What's his real name?
Boston University.
Yeah, Mark Williams. Yeah, that became such a big and funny story. I think that other people in that profession are going to be a little more careful about predicting the downfall of Bitcoin. I mean, people predict the downfall when it's going down, and they call it a bubble when it's going up, and they just don't like it, and so they want to see it fail, and but it's proven them all to be fools thus far, and cryptocurrency is going to keep growing because it's useful.
Let's check in with Dallas here. Dallas, do you guys have another question?
We do.
Yeah. So, Eric, it seems to be in the Bitcoin ecosystem where you're seeing kind of two trends happening: a decentralized trend, like with yourself and other companies, and then you've got this other trend of centralization and legislative action, et cetera, et cetera. So can the ecosystem handle both existing coexisting together, or are we gonna see some kind of split, or what's your thoughts on that?
Well, it's just a very diverse ecosystem, and people are going to move in different directions. And some people really want regulations, and they think there's nothing wrong with them, and they think the sooner we have them, the better. And so they're going to push for that. And there are other people who are either lukewarm about it or vehemently opposed, and they're going to push in their way, and it's just going to be kind of this spontaneous order of how it all plays out, and there's no way to predict it. But I think the clincher is that even if the people who are opposed to the regulation get their way, then fine, the regulation won't happen. If the people who want the regulation get their way and the regulation comes to pass, people will just not care about it. A lot of people will care about it, but it can be ignored. It's so easy to ignore a regulation when you have a private form of money that it's up to the politicians, I guess, if they want Bitcoin to have a white market and a dark market, or just a dark market. Because if they put all the regulations in place, there's only going to be the black market, and then they're going to be fighting that forever. So they can either outlaw all the good people from using it, or they can, let those good people use it. And I guess we'll see what happens. But ultimately, people that don't want to pay attention to the laws, they don't really have to, because Bitcoin's private. And thank goodness, the power of money now can be put back in the hands of individuals instead of states. I think it's really important that finally a technology has separated money and state, and future generations will look back on this and they'll be like, well, of course we should have done that. We don't want government, centrally planning and controlling the production of shoes or food or cars. Why do we have it in the realm of money? And right now people don't quite see it that way, but I think they will.
Thank you.
Great. Another question here.
Hi, Eric. Marco Pineda here. We've chatted before. My question is, why Panama exactly, as opposed to other countries like Chile, Costa Rica? What attracted you to Panama in specific?
Well, I had been in New York for a while with BitInstant, and we had realized that if we're going to start a Bitcoin business, we're going to get the hell out of the U.S. And there were a few candidates, Dubai, which I used to live in, Panama City, Hong Kong, and Singapore. And they were the candidates mostly because they have a zero or very low tax rate. I'm morally opposed to taxes, especially when they go to killing people. So that was kind of the main criteria, was a place that was business friendly and low or no taxes. And then we decided on Panama because it was closer to the U.S. It was in the U.S. time zone, and so it just made it a little more convenient. But any of the other three would have been good picks also.
Eric, you're actually one of the more eloquent speakers on the topic of Bitcoin and human liberty, just liberty itself. And we didn't really give you a chance just to talk about whatever you wanted to talk about. We've been asking questions. But maybe we just hand it over to you to let you talk about something. It's going to be up on YouTube, and what would you like people to hear about?
I think people just need to see this as people need to see that money should not be centrally planned. And this is what I just mentioned a few minutes ago. But especially in America, people grow up learning about the evil Soviet Union and how communism was so stupid. And even people who consider themselves leftists, will often agree that they don't want communism, they don't want the government controlling all this stuff. And so we all seem to agree that the government shouldn't be controlling all these important things that we have, all these products, right? We don't want the government building and manufacturing and producing all of our cars. We think it's better for open competition among car manufacturers to deliver vehicles to us. So why do we then change the argument completely when it comes to the good of money? And I think it's because people don't see money as a good. They tend to see it as sort of some kind of magical system that they don't really pay attention to, but that kind of works most of the time. And they don't realize that money is just a good. It's just the most bartered for good. And that was more clear when it was gold, because gold is clearly a good. And when people used it as money, they understood that better. But money is just a good. It's just like cars or pizza or Xboxes. And like cars and pizza and Xboxes, I don't want the government producing that or controlling it. It's better left in the hands of individuals who want to figure it out and use it. And just because cars can be life-threatening if manufactured incorrectly. So it's not like it's because money is so much more dangerous than cars that we must allow the government to control everything about it. And so Bitcoin, instead of having to make this argument as a political argument, which is libertarians have been doing for a long time and it doesn't really get anywhere, Bitcoin basically comes along and just smacks the whole world in the face and says, we're not going to vote on this anymore. We have now built a system that removes money from the government through technology. So there's not going to be a vote. We're not going to put this up for the politicians or the president to sign it. We're just going to take back the power of money ourselves through technology. And the web did this with information and news, which is great. And now Bitcoin has done it with money, and it's a really wonderful thing. And all the regulatory noise of how they're going to regulate it, I think, is just noise. Ultimately, Bitcoin cannot be regulated effectively, and the end result is just people will have control of money finally, and they will have something that they can store their wealth in that isn't debased by governments. They can interact with each other economically without anyone else having a say or censorship over it, and then that's going to be a really amazing thing. So it's very exciting to be part of that.
Thank you, Eric, for your time. I think it's been an interesting discussion. Let's give him a
Thank you, guys. It's been fun.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric.
Yep. See ya.